6 o'clock Central Africa time, which means it's time to rise and shine on Channel Africa Radio, where we bring you the African perspective. A very good morning to you. We're broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg on Afrique du Sud in South Africa, streaming on the internet at www.channelafrica.co.za, and also you can find us on your mobile apps on SABC Plus. Just look for Channel Africa and you can take us wherever you want. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. My name is Ndoro.
My name is Asanda, Beda, and welcome to the show as we get into it for the next 3 hours. And in this first hour, we'll be looking at Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama, who's declared 3 days of mourning following a helicopter crash which killed 8 people. And also, it is Independence Day for Ivory Coast. All those stories and more coming up in this first hour. Of course, as I say, we'll together for the next 3 hours. But first, let's say good morning to Jwalane Tulo Mwepe with the news, and news for sports headlines, that is, will be with Fikile Lingwadi after her.
SABC News, the African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Ghana's defense and environment ministers have been in a military helicopter crash. The tragedy happened in the southern Ashanti region. The ministers perished along with 3 other officials and 3 Air Force crew. Ghana's government has expressed condolences to the bereaved families and the nation of Ghana. Kaeli Kumalo has more.
Ghanaian President John Mahama's Chief of Staff, Julius Debris, described the incident as a national tragedy. He has announced that Defense Minister Edward Omale Boma and his environment counterpart, President Mahama, has also expressed his condolences to his comrades and servicemen who died in the service of the West African country. Earlier, Ghana's armed forces indicated that the radar contact had been lost with Z-9 Air Force helicopter.
The Eswatini government says the repatriation process of 5 of the most dangerous criminals deported from the US has begun. The South African Department of International Relations and Cooperation has raised concerns with Eswatini over the arrival of the group, saying their countries of origin are unlikely to receive them. They were convicted of child rape, murder, robbery, second-degree homicide and assault, among other crimes. Acting Eswatini government spokesperson Tabile Mdluli says the group will be deported to their native countries in less than 12 months.
The repatriation processes have already begun with other stakeholders. Although at this point it's very difficult to say how long that process is going to take, we are sure maybe in less than 12 months they should all be gone back to their countries.
South Africa's Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DIRCO, says it's against the use of symbols and a South African flag by former President and Umkhonto we Sizwe party leader Jacob Zuma during his recent meeting with Morocco's Foreign Affairs Minister Nasser Bourita in Rabat. The department spokesperson, Crispin Piri, says while they recognize the sovereign right of Morocco to invite individuals and groups, they are against the use of the South African national symbols.
South Africa has indicated to Morocco that the display of national symbols inherently conveys official state endorsements and elevates the perception of the encounter to that of a state-to-state engagement. This characterization is inconsistent with established diplomatic protocol, as the participants did not represent the official positions or engagements of the South African state.
The medical charity MSF says living conditions for nearly 400,000 refugees in Ethiopia's Gambela region are rapidly deteriorating due to significant aid cuts from key donors, including the United States. It says nutrition services in most camps have been suspended. The BBC's Will Ross reports.
MSF says there are now many empty buildings in the refugee camps because NGOs that once provided essential services have pulled out due to aid cuts. It says people are now receiving less than a third of the calories they need. MSF has seen a sharp rise in the number of young children in its therapeutic feeding centres. The UN says across the world, women and children are being hit hardest by the cuts.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulongwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headlines this hour, Ryan Rickleton will take over as the number one batter when South Africa takes on Australia. And the draw for the COSAFA women has been conducted. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
So each morning after the 6 o'clock news, we bring you some stories you may have missed and make sure that you are up to date in terms of what's happening in and around our continent. Compiling these stories are our team of researchers, our journalists, our editors, and that's also a way of throwing forward in terms of what to expect in developing stories on the space of news in this new day. So today we look at Ghana first, and we call this feature the Africa Roundup. So in Ghana, the president there, John Dramani Mahama, has declared 3 days of mourning following a helicopter crash which killed 8 people, including the country's Minister of Defense and Environment. Mahama has also suspended all official activities. The country's flags will fly at half-mast. The cause of the crash is unknown at this stage.
Sudan has accused the United Arab Emirates of backing the RSF and sending Colombian mercenaries to fight on its behalf in Darfur region, especially around Al-Fashir, which is the capital of North Darfur and the last stronghold for the army and allied groups. Al-Fashir has been under besieged since May 2024 as the RSF is trying to control it because it's the last capital that is not under control of the RSF in Darfur region. Fighting between the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces triggered on April 2023 and killed tens of thousands of people and displaced over 12 million and created the world's worst and largest scale humanitarian crisis.
And that story on Sudan, where Sudan is accusing the United Arab Emirates of sending foreign fighters to support the paramilitary rapid support forces in the Darfur region against the Sudanese armed forces. And that report was by Naba Mohideen.
Meanwhile, the United Nations says that a new wave of armed attacks in northern Mozambique has displaced thousands of civilians, placing added pressure on already strained humanitarian services. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that by the end of July, nearly 47,000 people had fled from 3 northern districts. Isaac Lukando has the details.
Recent attacks by armed groups have severely impacted 3 districts in northern Mozambique, Chiure, Ankwabe and Miudumbe. Chiure has been the hardest hit with around 42,000 people forced to flee. More than half of them are children. Displaced families are reported living in overcrowded, unhygienic conditions with many children separated from their parents or traveling alone. The UN says that growing insecurity has forced many to flee without identification documents, making it harder for them to access basic services and limiting their freedom of movement. Humanitarian assistance remains underfunded. Of the $352 million requested for aid, only $66 million has been received so far. The UN warns that without urgent funding, the situation could deteriorate further.
The U.S. State Department has announced that starting August 20, citizens of Zambia and Malawi applying for some tourist or business visas may be required to pay visa bonds of up to $15,000.
The move is part of an effort by the Trump administration to crack down on visitors who overstay their visas. A government notice issued Monday said the funds will be returned to travelers if they depart in accordance with the terms of their visas. Ghulam Asghar, who is visiting New York from the UK, isn't a fan of the new policy.
I think it will be a little unfair with the visitors because it's a lot of money for them. Because normally I think when you come here, you spend, if you are here for 10, 15 days, you will spend maybe $4,000 or $5,000 US. But if it's another 15 grand on top, it's just a lot.
The program gives U.S. consular officers the discretion to impose bonds on visitors from countries with high rates of visa overstays, according to a Federal Register notice. It also said bonds could also be applied to people coming from countries where screening and vetting information is deemed insufficient.
South Africa remains committed to promoting the peaceful and developmental use of nuclear energy. That's according to Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Alvin Bottas, who spoke at a public seminar titled The United Nations at 80, the Post-World War II Peace Architecture and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Never again should nuclear be used for maiming and for killing humankind. Nuclear should be essentially for development purposes. So the Pelindaba Treaty follows our voluntary decision as South Africa to forego of our nuclear arsenal. And the Pelindaba Treaty is the sum cumulative total of the aspirations of the African continent, commonly known as the Common Africa Position, where Africa have been unequivocal that nuclear should be for development and peaceful purposes.
In Mogadishu, Somalia, Uba Mohamud is defying gender norms as one of the city's only female mechanic. Inside a small garage, she skillfully works on a motorcycle engine, a rare sight in a profession still largely dominated by men. Alice Rizzo reports.
Her journey into mechanics was born out of necessity, but has since become a source of pride.
Being a female mechanic in this industry is challenging, but despite the difficulties, I'm happy doing this hard work as I currently have no other viable options.
Under the mentorship of seasoned mechanic Abdi Rizak Abdi, Muhammad has flourished. Abdi, who never trained a woman before, describes Muhammad as focused and eager to learn. These qualities have earned her a place in the workshop and his full support.
I have been working for about 30 years and I have not yet seen girls who are ready to learn skills like a mechanic, except for this girl called Uba. I am happy to uplift a woman who is ready to study, and I will teach her to the best of my ability as long as I am alive.
Well, there's a Women's Month story, as in South Africa we celebrate that month of August and dedicated to women. In Somalia, of course, it's in March. But anyway, we'll take that. That's where we end the roundup for Africa in on this Thursday. And coming up, Peter will be delving into the Central African region in more detail with our analyst Aaron Ngambi to get the stories making headlines within that region.
AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water-secure future. Register today at ausisa-watersan-dialogue.org or follow at AUSISA on social media. AUSISA, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's time now for us to take a look at what's been happening in a little bit more focus in the Central Africa region. With geopolitical analyst Aaron Ngambi, from escalating violence in the DRC and shifting political fault lines in Cameroon to simmering unrest in Angola and beyond. This is a region that's really seeing quite a lot, both disruption and resilience. Let's say good morning to Aaron Ngambi. Aaron, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Always a pleasure. Good morning to you, Peter, and good morning to the listeners this morning.
So the recent peace agreement, DRC M23 peace deal, and we see these peace deals quite often, and we always have hope. The one mediated in Washington and Doha seemed to offer a path forward, but the M23 appeared to be continuing their attacks, and this is the fear that we had. How do you assess the effectiveness of these agreements now, particularly amid reports that over 300 civilian deaths occurred last month?
Well, these peace deals were bound to actually fail. I'm sorry to say. If you look at what happened in Doha, for example, you had President Tshisekedi and President Paul Kagame come together and sit down with the leadership in Doha. But the problem was that there was no representative from the M23 group. And if you remember, Peter, for the longest time, the Rwandese government has refused that it does not fund or sponsor or support M23 rebels. So what were they doing at the peace negotiations in Doha? So the reason why I bring this as a point, it's because any day the peace deal can collapse and Rwanda can say, well, we have no control over M23. So that aside, you look at Washington, D.C. again, the same thing. You had no M23 rebels at the table of negotiations. And secondly, this was mineral for safety deal. America and the Trump administration were only interested in the raw earth minerals that are in the DR Congo. And that was the only motivation for them to broker a deal in the Eastern DR Congo. So that tells you that basically this deal was bound to fail because it was premised on external factors and external players. This is why the M23 rebels now are advancing, gaining more territory, and also causing more mayhem and killing more people. It is very unfortunate, but this was almost predictable.
I remember us having these conversations, excuse me, as those deals were signed. And we raised this exact point that the M23 are not there. And often we forget that it's not just the M23 in the east of the DRC. There are other insurgent groups there, and they're never brought to the table. So if we can figure it out, and we are not on the inside track of these things as the politicians are, how could they have missed it? Or were they just going through the motions?
Well, I think the problem was actually the motivations on all the parties at play. You made it a point there when you said that we did not see the M23 rebels, but they're not the only problematic rebel group or fighting insurgents in the region. You also FDLR, the ones that Kagame is so obsessed with, and he does not want them back in Rwanda because supposedly they are linked to the genocide of 1993. So you have that group as well in the Eastern DR Congo. And then you actually have the RDF, the Rwandese Defense Force, accused of being on the ground in the Eastern DR Congo. So there are many factions and many groups that should have been brought to the table as well. It doesn't matter even if they're just a tiny fraction of what the problem is, but they need to be at the table, and the problem needs to be discussed by the players that are actually fighting each other rather than external factors, external players that have a different motive.
To Cameroon now. The Constitutional Council there has upheld the decision to bar Maurice Kamto from the October election, and this is a move that's raising serious questions about electoral fairness and comes as President Biya, who's now 92, seeks another term. What does this tell us about the political trajectory and institutional integrity in Yaoundé at this time?
Well, Peter, it seems like your favorite African president is not going anywhere. At 92 years old, he wants an 80th term of office. It is just disgusting, and it is. Now, the reason why Maurice Kamto has been barred from running, remember, this would have been his second attempt. He ran first against Paul Biya in 2018 under a political party called the Cameroonian Resonance Movement, the CRM. And so what the Electoral Commission did in Cameroon was they barred that party from participating in the elections, saying that the party does not have local, meaning municipality, as well as parliamentary representation. Therefore, it did not qualify to be on the ballot. So under that pretext, they stopped him from being a candidate. And in 2018, he came out second from the incumbent. And so Maurice Kamto was really promising. He's been thrown in jail a few times. He's much younger than the 92-year-old president. And because of that, I think he's the only person that they think was a real threat to the establishment. So they had to buy his party from contesting, but the party actually took the case to the Constitutional Council. Unfortunately, the Constitutional Council has upheld that ban. Therefore, the CRM will not be on the ballot. But also, Maurice Kamto attempted to run on a different political party. And what has happened is that even that political party has not been allowed to be on the ballot. You remember we had about 81 candidates that were interested in running in the presidency of Cameroon in October this year, but only about 13 of them have been allowed to be on the ballot. And out of the 7 women, only 1 female has been allowed. So this is definitely an election that will be a sham, and it will be nothing free and fair about this election in Cameroon.
Do you think Cameroon is not reading the room properly? I mean, if you think about protests in Kenya, protests in Mozambique, protests in other countries, Sudan, you name it, more and more young people are just not putting up with this. And it seems that the ingredients for resistance are there in Cameroon. Do you think that we might see the same kind of action playing out? Each country always thinks, not in our country will that happen, and yet it does.
I think that it's a blessing in disguise that Paul Biya and his party and the people in government and the powers that be wants to take the Cameroonian people for granted. I think that this will be a catalyst and a recipe for the North and the South, the Anglo and the Francophone Cameroonians to come together and fight the regime. This will happen. It's just a matter of time. The young people are fed up of this. The ordinary Cameroonian people do not want anything to do with this, but it seems like the powers that be want to still impose their rule on the people. And so they've done divide and rule and tried to split people on tribal and regional basis. But I think what will happen now going forward is that when people are fed up, it doesn't matter where they come from. They'll look at the regime as the enemy of the people and that they're fed up with it and they'll fight it. And the same thing will play out, just like you said, as we've seen in other places, especially among young people.
Well, talking about protests, I mean, we've seen those in Angola recently, and this was sparked by a fuel subsidy removal, resulting in at least 29 and some 22 deaths. Some say it could be well over 30, and over 1,200 arrests. And this really does underscore some of the grievances that go far beyond fuel prices, I believe. Yes, some of it was hijacked by young people looting, but I do think that it does suggest societal tensions that are coming through in these protests. And I wonder what your thoughts are on this, because this is a story that seems to be playing itself out more and more in nations across the continent. The young people, as we were describing, just not putting up with it.
Well, and we're talking about Angola of all places, Peter. So you can imagine Angola has been peaceful since 1975 when they gained independence. We never heard of anything of this sort in Angola. And the fuel prices that we are talking about, the subsidies that have been removed, the fuel prices have gone up from, I think it's 33 cents to 44 cents US dollars per liter. I mean, this is not like a huge increment. But so this is just a sign that young people who have no jobs, young people who cannot make ends meet, young people who are fed up of the high cost of living are now beginning to realize, but they have to look for an excuse. They have to look for a reason why they need to protest, why they need to go out on the streets. So by and large, Angola under the MPLA government, which by the way, it's a liberation movement, it's a liberation party since independence of the country, they are now facing something that they've never seen before since the inception of the republic. So this is the country at the crossroads, and they have to make a decision. These people in power, do they either perpetuate their stay in power? Do they go for reforms that really change the material conditions of the people? This is something that we're yet to see. But by and large, you're right. The young people are not putting up with this. There's so much corruption. There's so much uncertainty in the economies of some of these countries, and people are standing up now.
Central African Republic President Touadera has announced that he'll be running for a third term after 2023's constitutional amendment removed term limits. Here's another story that plays out. They're all quite happy when they said you can have 2 terms, and then as they come towards the end of the second term, like magic, like there's a script, the constitution gets changed, and then they try for third terms, and before you know what's happening, you've got Yoweri Museveni's story playing out. Your thoughts about democratic norms and regional stability on the continent, I won't even just say the region, as a result of these kinds of things?
The Central African Republic is a sad story. We have a president again who is the best excuse of failed leadership that we have in Africa. He comes into office under the mandate that he only serve 2 terms, and then after seeing that he wants to stay forever, he lifts the term limits through a sham referendum, constitutional reforms that take place. And now he wants to go for a third term. He's 68 years old now. And I can guarantee you, Peter, I can come back here after another 7 years, because he's under that referendum. He's also changing term, not only removing term limits, but he's changing the number of years per term for the presidency from 5 years to 7 years. So I can come back and tell you that in the next 7-8 years, it's going to go not only for a third term, he'll go for a 4th term and try to go for a 5th term and have a Yoweri Museveni in that country. Now, this is the same thing that is happening in the Ivory Coast with Ouattara. He's done the same thing. He came under the mandate that he would only serve 2 terms, and then he took his eligibility question before the Constitutional Court. And of course, with the judges that are appointed by the executive, and these judges ruled that, well, his first term could not really count as per term. They gave all sorts of legal jargon to justify that. And now he is going for a third term, and he's lifted term limits on the presidency. So unfortunately, we see this over and over play out in some of these African leaders. And I think that we are tired of this. The continent needs to go for a leadership that is principled, a leadership that really keeps its promise, and a leadership that speaks the language of Uhuru Kenyatta. I think it's Kenyatta who said that there is life after the presidency. After 2 terms, these leaders need to realize they can still be somewhat important or significant figures, but they don't seem to see that. They want to stay in office, and some of them even want to die in office.
Aaron, perhaps finally, is there anything on the radar for you in this region that we should be watching in the coming week?
Yes, I think, as you are aware, Zambia and Malawi now are officially on the list of African countries that the United States has placed this bond on travel or tourist visas. So if you want to visit the United States and you're from any of those 2 countries, and I think other countries will be supposed to have about $15,000. This does not make sense. It's utter nonsense. How many Zambians or Malawans travel to America on vacation? It's unthinkable. I think that Trump is playing a card that is nothing but what we know already of his perception in terms of African leadership and African countries. And also, don't forget that he has placed 30% tariffs on all goods that are exported from South Africa to the United States. And he has even hinted that he perhaps will not attend the G20 meeting in South Africa in November. So these are some of the things that we have to look out for, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. Malawi goes to the elections in September, just next month. And it seems like the former president there, who's 84 years old, is likely to bounce back to power. So much to look out for in the region.
Aaron, it's always good talking to you, my brother. Thanks so much indeed, and we'll chat to you again next week. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Pete. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
one of our regular commentators, speaking about the region, Central Africa. Right, it's time now for your news headlines as we say good morning once again to Jwalani Tulo Ngwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Ghana's defense and environment ministers have been in a military helicopter crash. The tragedy happened in the southern Ashanti region. South Africa's Mkhonto weSizwe Party is calling on the government to cease its participation in the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. They are of the view that the group has done nothing to deconstruct colonial legacies. Instead, it exists to aid the British Crown's global influence. And finally, a British man has been charged with attempted murder after allegedly trying to drown his daughter-in-law in a Florida swimming pool. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's say good morning again to Fikile Lingwati with our full sports update, the first one for this Thursday on Rise and Shine.
SABC News. Breaking news.
Good morning, guys. It's feeling what sports news this hour. We begin with the cricket news. Ryan Rickleton will likely take up the role of the senior opener for the Proteas when they take on Australia in the T20 International Series starting on Sunday. In the absence of Reza Hendricks, who was dropped for this tour down under, Rickleton will almost certainly be paired up with young Luandria Pretorius at the top. Only 13 matches into his career, he's now having to play a leadership role against the number 2 ranked team in the world.
In all honesty, I'm still trying to, establish myself in the T20 side from my own personal point of view. Luckily enough, there is experience around me within T20 eyes, such as to Aiden and Rassi, but I don't think there'll be any expectation for me to change anything in what I've been doing this last 2 years. It's just an opportunity for me to hopefully claim that opening spot for the South African side going into the World Cup and going further on past that.
This series is one of the 3 major ones that South Africa will be involved in as they prepare for the T20 World Cup next year. Following Australia's, they'll jet off to England for another white ball tour before an all-format trip to India in November and December.
Yeah, massive. I think if you look at the fixtures lined up for the World Cup, we got 4 big series. These 2, obviously Australia, England, India and Pakistan. So, we got some big competition and some big rivals. So cricket against Australia and England, if we can put a good foot forward here and play quite well and, match what we want to try replicate in a few months' time.
Now, football news, the draw for the COSAFA zone qualifiers of the 2025 CAF Women's Champions League has been completed. The tournament will take place from the 22nd to the 31st of August 2025 in Johannesburg. Group A features South African Giants and 2-time champions Mamelodi Sundowns alongside Ndubwa FC of Malawi, Beauties from Namibia and Zescondola Girls from Zambia. This will be the first appearance at this stage of the competition for both Beauties FC and Zescondola Girls. Group B brings together last year's qualifying finalists Gaborone United Ladies of Botswana, Young Buffaloes of Eswatini and Kick for Life from Lesotho. Group C is headlined by seeded team Herentals Queens of Zimbabwe, who will face CD Costa do Sol of Mozambique and Olympique de Moroni from the Comoros. Let's end with boxing news. The much-anticipated rematch between British rivals Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn will take place at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in November. Eubank beat Benn by unanimous decision in a thrilling middleweight contest at the same venue in April. Despite no title being on the line, the bout between the bitter foes, which took place 35 years after their fathers Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn first fought, garnered huge attention. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
This August, we celebrate the strength, brilliance, and unstoppable spirit of African women.
It was the women themselves who strove for and got the changes by lobbying, going through NGOs, and by networking.
That's you, ladies. From the boardroom to the classroom, from the marketplace to the microphone, women are leading, innovating, and transforming our continent every day.
Oh, here's to knowing that as a woman, your voice can change the world.
Your voice matters. Your story inspires. Your presence is powerful. This Women's Month, we honor you. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Let's find out what's been happening in the world of business. And for a first update, here's Tabiso Luhuko. Good morning, my brother.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good morning. South Africa's Standard Bank has partnered with Africa Practice to host the Financing Africa Forward Summit in Johannesburg. Yesterday's one-day summit was part of the broader discussions being held at the Business 20 B20 as a supporting body for the group of G20 countries. South Africa will host the G20 summit in November. Executive Head of International Trade and Business and Commercial Banking, Standard Bank Group, Lutando Vuba, explains.
The Financing Africa Forward Summit really is birthed out of the B20 process, and B20 is one of the key working groups or subchapters of the G20, if you like, which is short for Business 20. And as part of that, there are 8 task forces, and one of those task forces is the Finance and Infrastructure Task Force, which is chaired by our Group CEO, Sim Chabalala.
The South African Reserve Bank has urged those with loans at the Ditsobotla Primary Savings and Credit Cooperative Bank in the Northwest Province to continue to pay their debt. The institution has placed the bank in resolution, which means that the Reserve Bank has taken over its affairs. The bank experienced substantial losses over the past year, could not pay its creditors, and failed to meet liquidity requirements. Although funds cannot be withdrawn at the moment, Chief Executive Officer of Cooperation for Deposit Insurance, Sabiha Mohammed, says members should not default on loan repayments.
If you have a loan with the bank, you have to continue paying your loan because that legal obligation remains in place. So yes, you have to continue paying your loan. The loan amount will decrease as you pay it off. And then at some point, the resolution practitioner will advise as to the way forward.
Glencore says a significant portion of its cobalt production was likely to remain unsold by the end of 2025 due to Democratic Republic of Congo's suspension of cobalt exports. DRC, the world's top cobalt supplier, imposed a 4-month suspension on exports in February after prices hit a 9-year low, and then extended it by 3 months in June. In its first half results statement, Glencore says that the extension of the export ban is expected to significantly tighten cobalt availability and accelerate inventory drawdowns, providing support to prices. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order imposing an additional 25% tariff on India, taking the overall rate to 50% over India's purchases of Russian oil. In the order, Trump said that he had found that India was currently directly or indirectly importing Russian federal oil, with the new tariff rate expected to go into effect in 21 days. He also threatened new sanctions on Russia by Friday if Moscow didn't take steps to end the war with Ukraine. Showan Braspies reports.
Trump said earlier that India was not only buying massive amounts of Russian oil, but that they were also selling it on the open market for big profits, and that they don't care how many people in Ukraine are being killed by the Russian war machine. India's foreign ministry warned that it would take all necessary measures to safeguard its national interests and economic security. He also imposed a 50% levy on imports from Brazil, Latin America's largest economy, over political considerations and Trump's support for former President Jair Bolsonaro.
McDonald's global comparable sales for the second quarter beat Wall Street estimates as affordable meal bundles and promotions drew in budget-conscious diners looking to stretch their dollars amid economic uncertainty. Data compiled by LSEG reveals that a strong demand in the US and international markets powered a 3.8% rise in global same-store sales above expectations of a 2.4% rise. Shares in the Chicago, Illinois-based company rose 3.4% in pre-market trading. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,527 naira. Botswana 13.39, Kenya 128 shilling 599, and Zambia 22 kwacha 90. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5.48. Russia 79 rubles 93. India 87 rupees 4. China 71.18. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 81 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Gold is trading at $3,377 and platinum $1,326 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $67.52 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
The G20 fact for this Thursday. Did you know that the G20 consists of two parallel tracks, which are the Sherpa and Finance tracks? The Sherpa track consists of working groups that are focused on socio-economic issues such as agriculture, anti-corruption, climate, digital economy, education, employment, energy, environment, health, tourism, trade and investment. The finance track, headed by finance ministers and central bank governors, relates to fiscal and monetary policy issues such as the global economy, infrastructure, financial regulation, inclusion, IFA and taxation. And that's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality and sustainability.
South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sports, brings you Chasing the Sun, and that's a powerful 5-part documentary series about the Springboks, that's the South African national rugby team, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimately World Cup glory in 2019. It started on the 13th of July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. And you can still tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, the heroics that made rugby history. And you can stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, and no subscription is required. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
Now, Botswana has, in the recent past, been facing significant challenges regarding the availability of essential medicines and other medical commodities. Addressing Botswana's parliament yesterday afternoon in Gaborone, Botswana's capital, Botswana's Minister of Health, Dr. Stephen Modise, said that his department is currently not able to offer all comprehensive health services that it should under normal circumstances. Modise said that the development has directly impacted the healthcare system. Channel Africa's Shingirai Madondo reports from Gaborone.
Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Health is currently not able to offer all comprehensive health services that it should be able to under normal circumstances. This situation has been aggravated by the outstanding financial obligations owed to suppliers and private health facilities, amounting to more than 1 billion pula. These arrears have directly impacted our ability to procure and supply necessary medical products to the public and health institutions on time and in adequate quantities.
This is Botswana's Minister of Health, Dr. Stephen Mdise, dropping the bombshell when addressing South Africa's neighboring country's parliament yesterday afternoon, saying this shortage of funds and medicines has regrettably reduced the country's capacity to continue referring patients to private health facilities for services that cannot be provided within public health institutions. Under normal circumstances, Botswana would refer patients to private players in the health sector within the southern African country, South Africa, as far afield as India, China, and other overseas countries. However, as a result of the crisis that the President Duma Boko-led government finds itself in, Botswana has decided to temporarily suspend referrals for elective and non-urgent medical conditions and operations to private health facilities.
This includes, but not limited to, arthroplasty, this is joint replacement surgeries, insertion of prosthetic eyes, organ transplants, and other conditions or operations that are deemed to be non-life-threatening. Madam Speaker, all these and other non-life-threatening conditions will in the meantime be managed internally at nearest health facilities to avoid deteriorations and complications, while a permanent solution is being sought.
However, Dr. Kifilwe Slema, the president of Botswana Doctors Union or BDU, is of the view that the government is taking a suicidal route of managing some patients' medical conditions in the public health facilities. Dr. Slema said the public facilities in Botswana lack the necessary equipment and personnel to perform some complicated life-threatening surgeries. For nurses, watching patients' health deteriorating in front of them is traumatizing, according to Ureditse Kileba Khosi, the vice president of the Botswana Nurses Union, or BUN. Kileba Khosi urged the government to prioritize health funding in order to save the population of Botswana, estimated at just over 2.1 million people.
Have tried to guide the government or advise that the government should prioritize health because deferring or postponing patient's booking, which actually worsens the condition of the patient. So our plea is for the government to reprioritize health really. We understand their view that the resources are not allowing, but we still maintain our plea that health should be prioritized to save the population of this country.
Sales of diamonds, Botswana's economy saw a steep decline last year, with Botswana, a 50-50 joint venture between Botswana government and DBS Diamond Group, recording a 46% deficit in 2024, dropping from 45.3 billion pula to 24.6 billion pula, marking one of the steepest falls on record. The sharp downturn is straining Botswana's national budget and bank liquidity, with forecasts predicting a record 18.7 billion pula deficit for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Reporting for Channel Africa from Gaborone, Botswana, this is Shingra Madondo.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has declared 3 days of mourning following a helicopter crash which killed 8 people, including the country's ministers of defense and environment. Mahama has also suspended all official activities. The country's flags will fly at half-mast. The cause of the crash is unknown at this stage. Julius Debra, Chief of Staff to the President of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, addressed the media on the plane crash last night. Let's have a listen at what he had to say.
In the tragic crash, Dr. Edward Kofi Omane-Boamah, Minister for Defense, Alhaji Dr. Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, MP, Minister for Environment, Science and Technology, Alhaji Muniru Mohammed Lemonad, Acting Deputy National Security Coordinator and former Minister for Food and Agriculture, Dr. Samuel Sapon, Vice Chairman of the National Democratic Congress, and Mr. Samuel Abuaji, a former parliamentary candidate, Squadron Leader Peter Bafemi Anala, Flying Officer Manin Chum Ampedu, and Sergeant Ernest Ado Mensah. The President and government extends our condolences and sympathies to the families of our comrades and the servicemen who died in service to the country. All flags are to fly at half-mast until further notice. Thank you.
So we're joined now by our correspondent in Ghana, Eric Mawena, to get detail on the story. Eric, thank you for joining us. A sad morning. I can't even ask how you're feeling this morning in Ghana. But thanks for making time for us in terms of shedding more light on this tragic incident. What exactly do we know about what happened and where it happened exactly, this military plane crash in Ghana?
Right, Asanda, good morning. Yes, a very, very sad last few hours in Ghana following that tragic incident, and so what we know, as you rightly stated, we don't have details as to what caused the crash, but what it is that we know is that the government delegation, I say a government delegation because it had not just the two ministers, but it had a deputy national security coordinator as well as other members of the governing party all on board. Before that unfortunate crash, we're headed to the Ashanti regional town of Obuasi, very well known for gold mining, because of the issues of illegal mining, which has plagued Ghana and was dominant subject theme in the lead up to the December elections last year. The government, since it took over, has been rolling out different initiatives to seek to curb the activities of illegal mining. And one of such events or one of such activities was being launched, a mining cooperative where they were seeking to introduce a cooperative between communities to ensure that the young persons there do not find their way into illegal mining pits. And if they mine, they do that legally and sustainably while also finding alternative livelihoods for them as well. That was the occasion upon which the government delegation was on its way to the Ashanti region before that unfortunate accident which happened. What we know is that from eyewitness account from the residents in the Ekrofom town in the Ashanti region where this incident happened, they say that they saw the military helicopter, the Z9 military helicopter, flying at a very low altitude up until the time they had a loud bang, and then they knew something was amiss and began to make their way there. The difficulty with everything as well is that this happened in a dense forest and it was a mountainous area as well, and so even for rescue operations they had to walk about an hour and 30 minutes before they could reach the site of the crash, making it even more difficult in that moment for any possible rescue efforts to have happened between when the aircraft went down and when news reached the respective government agencies for rescue efforts to have commenced immediately. It's been a very difficult last 24 hours, like you mentioned, even for us news persons as well. I had the unfortunate pleasure of having to have broken the news when it happened, and all throughout from the respective constituencies of some of these members of there was a sitting member of parliament who happens to be the Minister for Environment, Dr. Murtala Mohammed, from his home to his constituency to the home and other areas of all the other persons. It's been grief non-stop and uncontrollable tears up until now. The president himself has been so shaken by this because at some point in time he was supposed to have been at this event, but due to the nature of his schedules he had to delegate for the defense minister to represent him, a journey upon which he was on before this unfortunate demise. And so that's quite shaking the president as well. It was a confirmation we got from the education minister who spoke to the media after the chief of staff had announced or confirmed their demise, because news began to spread thick and fast, and bloggers and social media commentary meant that the government needed to take immediate steps to announce their death to further stem whatever misinformation may have arisen from the incident. And so a 3 days of mourning has been announced, and from here on in, flags are flying at half mast after a government delegation visited the homes of the eight, unfortunately, demise, informing them officially of the incident.
As you mentioned, there are key ministers and officials who've lost their lives from this plane crash. Can we confirm which ministers they are? I think you mentioned Environment Minister as well.
Yes, and so Asana, if I could just go through officially the names of the ministers, and so we have the Defense Minister. He was leading, amongst many other things, that delegation because he was doing so on behalf of the president, Dr. Edward Omaneboama. Then there was the Environment, Science and Technology Minister, who mining and its related activities also falls under Dr. Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed. There was Alhaji Muniru Mohammed, who is the acting Deputy National Security Coordinator. Then there was Dr. Samuel Sapong, who is the National Vice Chairman of the ruling party in the country, the National Democratic Congress. Mr. Samuel Abuaji, as well, is a former parliamentary candidate of the ruling party who contested 2 elections, unfortunately did not win, and was a part of the team which was headed there. Then to the flight crew, squadron leader Peter Anala, who was the pilot, a flying officer Chuman Pedu, and then Sergeant Ernest Adom Mensah, all with the Ghana Air Force, unfortunately not surviving this rather unfortunate crash.
Our condolences go out to the families of those fallen soldiers. A tragic story indeed. The president of Ghana, John Mahama, has declared 3 days of mourning, as you mentioned before, also flags flying at half-mast. But what is the mood generally on the ground then? The ordinary Ghanaians, what are they saying? How are they responding?
It's been one of shock, one of anguish, and what many people cannot believe, the fact that a crash so devastating had to take place. For a lot of people, they are even petrified, because at some point in time it could have been the president on this military aircraft, and many ask the question, could this have meant the president of the republic would have suffered this unfortunate fate? Many as well are recounting the lives lived by these individuals. A number of them, one of the sergeants, Sergeant Mensah, leaving a freshly wedded wife. He just got married last month. The pilot of the aircraft, squadron leader Peter Nala, has a 2-month-old baby, amongst many other things. And for a lot of the people who are sharing their encounters with these individuals and the ministers of state, many of whom people know as very generous and respectable individuals, it's been too hard a pill to swallow. We've seen other government officials who've made it to their homes and are in unconsolable and uncontrollable tears. And it's been a very difficult last 12 hours.
Eric, we'll continue to monitor the story. I'm sure we'll catch up with you at a later stage, but thank you so much for shedding light so far.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Eric Mawena Egbeta is Channel Africa's Ghana correspondent, giving us
You're
an
welcome.
update on that military plane crash that's happened there in Ghana. Hour of Rise and Shine. It's 7 o'clock Central African time, coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios as Channel Africa. We are Africa Rise and Shine. My name is Asanda Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Yes, indeed. In this next 30 minutes right here on the program, we're going to be taking a look at the Vietnamese president, Luong Suong, who's on a 4-day state visit to Angola. Why is he there? What are they looking at? We'll be unpacking that. And one doesn't often hear about the Vietnamese president's visits, but he's here on our continent, and we're unpacking the significance of his stop in Angola. All of that still to come after the news with Jwalane Tulongwepe and your sports headlines with Figile Lingwati.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Ghana's Defence and Environment Ministers have been killed in a military helicopter crash. The tragedy happened in the southern Ashanti region. The ministers perished along with 3 other officials and 3 Air Force crews. Ghana's government has expressed condolences to the bereaved families and the nation. Kaeli Kumalo has more.
Ghanaian President John Mahama's Chief of Staff, Julius Debris, described the incident as a national tragedy. He has announced that Defence Minister Edward Omane Boma and his environment counterpart, Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed, have died in the helicopter crash. President Mahama has also expressed his condolences to his comrades and servicemen who died in the service of the West African country. Earlier, Ghana's armed forces indicated that the radar contact had been lost with Z9 Air Force helicopter.
The repatriation process of 5 of the most dangerous criminals deported from the US to Eswatini has begun. The South African Department of International Relations and Cooperation has raised concerns with Eswatini over the arrival of the group, saying their countries of origin are unlikely to receive them. The violent criminals were convicted of child rape, murder, robbery, second-degree homicide and assault, among other crimes. Acting Eswatini government spokesperson Tabile Mdluli says the group will be deported to their native countries in less than 12 months.
The repatriation processes have already begun with other stakeholders. Although at this point it's very difficult to say how long that process is going to take, we are sure maybe in less than 12 months they should all be gone back to their countries.
The medical charity MSF says living conditions for nearly 400,000 refugees in Ethiopia's Gambela region are rapidly deteriorating due to significant aid cuts from key donors, including the United States. It says nutrition services in most camps have been suspended. The BBC's Will Ross reports.
MSF says there are now many empty buildings in the refugee camps because NGOs that once provided essential services have pulled out due to aid cuts. It says people are now receiving less than a third of the calories they need. MSF has seen a sharp rise in the number of young children in its therapeutic feeding centres. The UN says across the world, women and children are being hit hardest by the cuts.
South Africa's Umkhonto weSizwe party is calling on the government to withdraw from the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. They say that the group has done nothing to deconstruct colonial legacies. Instead, it exists to aid the British Crown's global influence. South Africa is a member of the Commonwealth of Nations, having rejoined in 1994 after initially withdrawing in 1961 due to international pressure and criticism of the country's then apartheid policies. KwaZulu-Natal MK Party MPL Ishana Basiela.
The MK Party make a very clear align itself to BRICS and not have anything to do with the Commonwealth Association or the Commonwealth. We see the West as now a crowning global power. We want to lead our people to a system where land will be restored to them and where the restitution of ill-begotten loot will take place. India, for example, is claiming its rightful ownership of diamonds and other minerals that were taken away.
A British man has been charged with attempted murder after allegedly trying to drown his daughter-in-law in a Florida swimming pool. Mark Gibbon, aged 62, was on holiday with his family at the Solterra Resort in Davenport near Walt Disney World Resort when the disagreement over his grandchildren erupted. Gibbon from Buckinghamshire is accused of pushing and holding the 33-year-old woman's head under the water multiple times, preventing her from breathing. He is charged with attempted second-degree murder and 2 counts of battery. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, Congo coach Ngatsono hails the growing competitiveness of the Total Energies Chan tournament. And Golf South Africa announces teams for 2025 World Amateur Team Championship in Singapore. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
Right, it's now time for us to turn our attention to what's happening in Central Africa. Malawi and Zambia, that's Southern Africa, have become the first two African countries whose citizens will now be subjected to visa bonds when applying for B1, B2 visas due to what the US government says is high overstay rates. Now, the US government says that travelers holding passports from Malawi or Zambia must post a bond of up to $15,000 if found eligible for a B1, B2 visa. Now, this comes 2 months after Malawi and another 22 African countries were ordered by Washington to improve its immigration policies, else impose a travel ban on her citizens. Malawi authorities say that they've not received official communication from the US on the matter. Channel Africa correspondent in Malawi is George Mahango.
The U.S. government says from October 20, 2025, travelers holding passports from Malawi or Zambia must post a bond of up to $15,000 if found eligible for a B1 or B2 visa. While the bond amount will be determined during the visa interview process, the money would be returned to the applicant upon return or if the application is rejected. The US B1 or B2 visa is a non-immigrant visa issued for individuals who wish to visit the US temporarily for business, that's B1, or tourism and pleasure, B2 purposes. B1 visa, that is for business, allows individuals to visit the US for business purposes such as attending conferences, seminars or meetings, negotiating contracts or agreements, and is typically valid for 6 months but can be extended. B2 visa, which is for tourism or pleasure, allows individuals to visit the US for tourism or pleasure purposes such as visiting family or friends, sightseeing or vacationing, and valid for 6 months but can be extended. Some Malawians, like Kingsley Manza, want authorities here in Malawi to discuss with their U.S. counterparts for a review of the visa bond amount, saying it is likely to affect those seeking education, business opportunities, and medical care.
This is almost saying we don't want you here. Someone to raise, let's say someone is going to do is on an education visit or is on the business trip. So to raise a certain amount of money and also raise extra, and we're talking about $5,000 or even $10,000. That's a lot of money in Malawi. I think there should be a way to review, or maybe there's a better way of making sure that people, they don't overstay.
The U.S. has since justified the decision on the basis that the policy is part of a pilot program established under the recently published temporary final rule aimed at addressing overstays recorded in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security during the 2023 Overstay Report. Washington further says all applicants from the two landlocked nations must also submit Form 1 to 352, issued by the Department of Homeland Security, agreeing to the terms of the bond. However, a tourism expert, Jean Kasunda, has spelled doom for budding traders who have just negotiated for trade links with their U.S. counterparts.
The implication is that the U.S. will limit the trade that happens, especially involving budding small-scale traders that ply goods between Malawi and the U.S. These trading activities will go down. And then, eventually, the perception among Malawians and Zambians about the U.S. will go down. Malawians or Zambians will no longer see the U.S. as a friendly country. However, the best thing that we can do as African states is to make sure that we improve the living standards of our people.
What has also been stressed is that payments are to be made via the U.S. Treasury, and the requirement applies regardless of where the visa application is made. Immigration and security experts in Malawi think the measure marks a significant shift in U.S. immigration enforcement toward certain African nations and is expected to impact travel and tourism ventures. 2 months ago, Malawi was among the 22 African nations ordered by the U.S. government to improve immigration policies, or else their citizens risk a ban from traveling to that country. Malawi authorities, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, have declined to comment on the matter, claiming they have not received any official communication from the U.S. government. George Mhango, Channel Africa News, Blantyre.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Did I close it? It's not there. U.S. President Donald Trump's latest wave of reciprocal tariffs on exports from several dozen trading partners has countries and companies scrambling for better deals, with some economists warning of a possible recession in the United States as a result of a slowing down in the world's largest economy. That's the U.S. Tariffs are set to go into effect just after midnight Thursday, including a 30% rate on most exports from South Africa, one of the highest rates in sub-Saharan Africa, with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition in the country of South Africa indicating it could shave off 0.2% of the country's economic growth. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports from New York on the current state of play, including ongoing challenges to the new tariff regime in U.S. courts.
South Africa is not alone in seeking to finalize a new trade framework with the US, Canada facing a 35% tariff rate, Switzerland a whopping 39%, Brazil a punitive 50%, among a host of countries slapped with new duties. The impact's expected to be felt in those source countries, but also in the United States, where consumers are likely to bear the brunt. Moody's Analytics chief economist Mark Zandi on social media this week, warning that the U.S. economy was on the precipice of a recession over contracting, construction and manufacturing sectors. A view echoed by Dr. Gary Clyde Huffbauer of the Peterson Institute for International Economics.
It's a completely ridiculous economic policy. I think the U.S. economy is slowing down anyway because a lot of households are heavily indebted, and business investment. I know that Trump announces all these deals, but in fact, business investment has not been good in the first half of the year because many firms they don't know what's going to happen next. So they delay. So I think we're headed for a slower period of economic growth and maybe even some drop. A little bit of recession. Not a big recession, but a small recession.
Take Mexico, with whom a broader trade deal remains outstanding. The Trump administration in July announced a 17% duty on fresh tomatoes imported from that country, leaving importers like Jacobs Tomato Corp., a Brooklyn, New York wholesaler that gets about 90% of their tomatoes from Mexico, unclear about the future. Company buyer Shai Yosifov.
The United States can't handle the demand they don't grow enough to supply the United States of America. It's not realistic because not a lot of people are growing a wide variety of tomatoes in the United States, and the labor here is too much money, and they're not going to do the work here. In Mexico, they're going to do the work. They're going to get it done, and I don't think in the United States they're going to get it done. The only way to fix this is if they start giving growers land and they start growing more tomatoes in the United States. But right now that's not happening. So basically either they got to fix that problem first before tariffing Mexico, or either we got to keep it the old way, the same way it was before.
While unpredictability has framed the tariff debate, it is also being used as a political tool, as evidenced by the 50% levy on Brazil and India, over the coup trial of Trump ally and former President Jair Bolsonaro, and India's purchasing of Russian oil. All this while US inflation is picking up, consumer prices rising, and the labour market starting to show signs of cooling. Thomas Madreki is Vice President of Supply Chain at the Consumer Brands Association.
If you carry through an America First trade policy that actually doesn't pick winners and losers from U.S. manufacturers, that doesn't unnecessarily raise grocery prices, you get the benefit of the leverage of the trade negotiating table, the enhanced export market access for U.S. producers that are selling abroad. You've seen this carried through in some of the recent administration announcements where they are showing that having sort of a tough trade negotiating stance is driving wins. And so if you can get that without some of the immediate harm so like consumers feeling the pain at the grocery store, that is a win-win.
South Africa's DTI has launched an export support desk to assist affected companies and advise on alternative markets, even as officials affirm that all channels of communication remain open in terms of finalizing a new bilateral trade arrangement with the United States. Minister Parks Tau.
We continue to engage with the U.S. government, and it is our intention that these negotiations are continued until a point at which we're able to reach a conclusion. And that, I think, is an important statement to make, because I think that the idea that we can get to a point where we just decide that we're not going to talk to any government and we're not going to engage in trade negotiations, I think would be irresponsible for us as a country.
A three-judge panel of the U.S. Court of International Trade initially ruled in May that President Trump had no authority to impose the reciprocal tariffs, but that block was lifted by an appeals court while it considered the broader dispute. The case, brought by 12 Democratic-led states and 5 small business owners, argued that the president overstepped his authority by imposing across-the-board tariffs on countries. The Court of International Trade ruled that the U.S. Constitution gave Congress the exclusive authority to regulate commerce with other countries, and that this was not overridden by the president's emergency powers to protect the U.S. economy. That matter is now before the 11 judges of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, and their future decision is likely to be appealed to the Supreme Court, that will have the final say on whether the tariffs imposed can stay in place, adding additional uncertainty into an already complicated mix. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Now, Vietnamese President Luan Suong has begun a 4-day state visit to Angola aimed at boosting trade, investment and technical cooperation. Talks with President João Lourenço will focus on agriculture, energy, education and infrastructure. Now, both sides are expected to sign agreements to expand bilateral trade and strengthen South-South collaboration. Officials say that this visit could transform long-standing political solidarity into deeper economic partnerships, with Angola serving as a gateway to African markets and Vietnam offering expertise in agriculture and manufacturing. Well, to talk to us a little bit more about this, we're now joined by Jose Gama, who's an Angolan analyst based in South Africa. Jose, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, sir.
So let's start with this. Why is Angola looking to strengthen ties with Vietnam? What's driving this focus?
Well, Vietnam is a long partner to Angola. It's a country that Angola got a relationship since even before the independence. Let's say starts in 1971 when former President Agostinho Neto, when was leading the MPLA guerrilla, used to visit Vietnam, and it was one of the country also that helped the struggle, the liberation struggle. And Angola now is turning to, I mean, is turning to China, not now, like on the past 20 years, and also to Vietnam. So now they want to improve the relation, those partnership. So that's why the president is in Rwanda to pay a state visit and also to sign some trade accords on sector of agriculture, health, technology, energy, and construction. If you see, there's a lot of Vietnamese people living in Angola. They are around, like some say, like 10,000. Others say like 40,000. But the community are very big. There's a lot of Vietnamese people, I mean, interpreters investing in Angola or living even in the country. That's why Angola wants to have that opportunity to open the doors to Vietnam.
What's in it for Vietnam then? We can see the story for Angola from what you've said. What has Vietnam got to gain?
So Vietnam has a lot of they got also a lot of resource that can help Angola. They got technology, they got labor. They are very good also in construction, and Angola is a country that's rebuilding after the civil war. That's why they 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 turn to Vietnam. So in Vietnam is a country also like China. They path a relationship with you, but they never impose things like Europeans and America does. Actually, the work is the same level, and now Angola wants to improve and want to increase the trade volumes. And they believe that Vietnam is one of the country in Asia that could also help us to develop our country.
So this visit comes at a time when Angola is trying to diversify its economy somewhat away from oil or beyond oil. Can Vietnam offer solutions for Angola in this regard, given the kind of progress that Vietnam has enjoyed itself as a good example of economic recovery?
Yes, because Angola, our economy depends totally of the oil and diamonds. And now we want to turn to agriculture. We want to make agriculture as our diamonds. And Vietnam is one of the countries that can help us because Vietnam got technical experts that should come to Angola and help us to turn this agriculture as as a new oil, as a new diamond. So one of the promise of President John Lorenco is to turn agriculture is to make the country dependent totally of agriculture. So that's why he turned to Vietnam, also China, and some other country, even South Africa are coming also to help us on agriculture. So that's the way President Lorenzo is trying to do his best to diversify the Angolan economy.
One of the things that we've seen on the continent is countries like China, for example, they would come to Africa and there'd be quite a number of Chinese companies with a presence on our continent. But the reverse is not often true, where African companies have big presences in China. What's the situation between Angola and Vietnam? Is there Angolan business in Vietnam? And are there Vietnamese businesses in Angola?
Actually, if you look at this, there's no Vietnamese I mean, there's a lot of Vietnamese in Angola, but not on opposite. We do have like people, I mean, Angolan student in Vietnam, but not people who are investing there. Not like China. In China now, let's say let's compare to China. There's a lot of Angolian now are investing also to China. Choosing partners in China, but that's not happened yet to Vietnam. So what happens is that there's a lot of Vietnamese entrepreneurs, investors working in Angola, but not the contrary.
Do you think that this could be an opportunity for Vietnam to use Angola as a vehicle to opening doors in the region and perhaps even beyond on the continent?
Yes, because Angola is a country that depends on 90% of the oil, and now let's say they're gonna sign agreements on the energy and petrol, and they also feel they're gonna sign a partnership between the states on the state company Sonangol and the Vietnamese also company, they call it Petrol Vietnamese. That's one of the opportunity they'll have on this state visit by the president of Vietnam, and to sign also accords on that field of energy.
Is this a visit that's going to register with the citizens in Angola? I mean, are they curious about the Vietnamese president's arrival, or will it be an ordinary day in their lives?
It will be an ordinary day, but it's a special one. It's a special, so the president will stay here for 4 days. Most of the presidents pay a visit stay for 1 or 2 days. So actually, that one is a special one. So he came yesterday afternoon. Probably today he will work with President Lorenco. Tomorrow, the president will visit some facilities, some also in probably also some facility built it by Vietnam, and then third day they should sign the business accords and also the partnership. Then on the fourth day, we'll be leaving the country.
And how do you see this relationship evolving in the next 5 to 10 years, perhaps? And the reciprocal question that I asked a short while ago, is this a vehicle for Angola, perhaps, to do more in the region of Asia beyond the traditional countries like China?
Yes, for sure. As I said, Angola is a country rich that is very rich in oil, and Vietnam are also interested in that partnership. And in Africa, let's say in our region, SADC, Angola is one of the few countries that says, I mean, it's the largest country, the largest oil producer, and it will also help for for our continent and our region GDP. So that's definitely will help. It's gonna help our region, not only in Angola, but and then after this, if this partnership will take place in a positive way, probably then we will attract other countries like Tanzania, DFC, Zambia, and others. So we have to look this in a positive way, and it looks like Now Angola was turning to China. Now want to turn to Vietnam, and so probably Vietnam is going to be the second China in our region.
And that's where we're going to have to leave it. Jose, thank you so much. Always great talking to you, and your insights greatly appreciated. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's Jose Gama, an Angolan analyst based in South Africa, talking to us about Vietnamese President Luon Seong's visit to Angola. 4-day state visit, and he arrived in the country yesterday. We'll keep on top of that story for you. Right now, though, it's time for your news headlines. Here's Jwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has declared 3 days of mourning following a helicopter crash which killed 8 people, including the country's ministers of defense and environment. The repatriation process of 5 of the most dangerous criminals deported from the US to Eswatini has begun, and family rights groups have welcomed a new law in Rwanda that aims to reduce teenage pregnancy by allowing people as young as 15 to access contraception. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's check in with the world of sports as Fikile Lingwati brings us our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Let's kick off with football news. Following Congo's opening draw against Sudan at the Total Energies CAF African Nations Championship CHAN 2024, head coach Bethelemi Ngatsono has hailed the tournament's growing level of competitiveness and professionalism. Ngatsono watched his side rally to secure a hard-fought point in a tightly contested encounter, which he believes showcased the elevated standard of the continental showpiece. Ngatsono added that Congo will take key lessons from the game and immediately turn their focus to their next challenge, a crucial Group C clash against defending champion Senegal on the 12th of August. On to cricket news, Ryan Riggleton will likely take up the role of the senior opener for the Proteas when they take on Australia in the T20 International Series starting on Sunday. In the absence of Reza Hendricks, who was dropped for this tour down under, Riggleton will almost certainly be paired up with young Luandre Pretorias at the top. Only 13 matches into his career, he is now having to play a leadership role against the number 2 ranked team in the world.
In all honesty, I'm still trying to, establish myself in the T20 side from my own personal point of view. Luckily enough, there is experience around me within T20 eyes, such as the Aiden and Rassi, but I don't think there'll be any expectation for me to change anything in what I've been doing this last 2 years. It's just an opportunity for me to hopefully claim that opening spot for the South African side going into the World Cup and going further on past that.
On to rugby news, scrum half Nick White has put his retirement on ice to join Australia's Rugby Championship squad for the tour of South Africa following an injury to regular number 9, Jake Gordon. A 35-year-old White announced the third and the final British and Irish Lions test in Sydney was to be his last international match. But today, he was included in Joe Schmidt's 35-man squad for South Africa. Uncapped scrum half Ryan Lonergan will join 73 Test White in the squad for next week's clash against world champion South Africa in Johannesburg and the second test in Cape Town on the 23rd of August. Fly half Tom Lineker will miss the tour, though after being struck high by Lions hooker Dan Sheehan in the Wallabies 2022-12 win in Sydney and subsequently failing a head injury assessment. Let's end with tennis news. American stars Taylor Fritz and Ben Shelton are on a collision course at the Canadian Open semifinals. It will mark the first All-American semifinal at the ATP Masters 1000 tournament in 15 years when Shelton and Fritz set to meet in the final 4 on Friday. Shelton has reached the semi-final of a Masters event for the first time in his career after ending Alex de Minaur's 7-match winning streak with 6-3, 6-4, while Fritz, who has one ATP 1000 title to his name after winning the 2022 Indian Wells Open, ousted Andrei Rublev 6376 and 74 tie. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Time now to get an African perspective on what's been happening in the world of business. Good morning once again, Thabiso Luhuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. The Black Business Council has called for harsher sanctions against corrupt individuals in South Africa. This in reaction to serious allegations that suspended Independent Development Trust Chief Executive Officer Tebogo Malaka sought to bribe journalist Peter Louis Meyerberg on allegations of corruption. The incident allegedly took place just days after Malaka's suspension, which followed a PricewaterhouseCoopers investigation. The investigation revealed irregularities connected to IDT's $46.8 million oxygen plants scandal. The Black Business Council CEO Khanki Matabane says the law must take its course.
Corruption eats into the resources that are supposed to deliver services in the country. The IDT's role is very, very critical.
South Africa's Standard Bank has partnered with Africa Practice to host the Financing Africa Forward Summit in Johannesburg. Yesterday's one-day summit was part of the broader discussions being held at the Business 20 B20 as a supporting body for the Group of 20 countries, the G20. South Africa will host the G20 summit in November. Executive Head of International Trade and Business and Commercial Banking, Standard Bank Group, Luthando Vuba, explains.
The Financing Africa Forward Summit really is birthed out of the B20 process, and B20 is one of the key working groups or subchapters of the G20, if you like, which is short for Business 20. And as part of that, there are 8 task forces, and one of those task forces is the Finance and Infrastructure Task Force, which is chaired by our Group CEO, Sim Chabalala.
The South African Reserve Bank has urged those with loans at the Ditsobotla Primary Savings and Credit Cooperative Bank in the Northwest Province to continue to pay their debt. The institution has placed the bank in resolution, which means that the Reserve Bank has taken over its affairs. The bank experienced substantial losses over the past year, could not pay its creditors and failed to meet liquidity requirements. Although funds cannot be withdrawn at the moment, Chief Executive Officer of a Corporation for Deposit Insurance, Sabiha Mohammed, says members should not default on loan repayments.
If you have a loan with the bank, you have to continue paying your loan because that legal obligation remains in place. So yes, you have to continue paying your loan. The loan amount will decrease as you pay it off. And then at some point the resolution practitioner will advise as to the way forward.
A Nigerian receiver has been appointed by lenders to KEPCO Energy Resources and its subsidiary, Egbin Power, 2 major players in the power sector, adding to worries about the industry's financial health. KEPCO owns 70% of Egbin Power, Nigeria's biggest electricity generator. The news comes as the sector faces a cash crisis estimated at $1.31 billion. The Italian government has approved a project to build the world's longest suspension bridge linking Sicily to the mainland. The project is set to cost more than $15 billion, will include 2 railway lines in the middle and 3 lanes of traffic on either side. The BBC's Sophia Batiza has the details.
The government says it will create thousands of jobs in the impoverished south, but critics say it's the greatest waste of public money ever seen in Italy.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,527 naira. Botswana 13.39, Kenya 128 shilling 599, and Zambia 22 kwacha 90. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 ril 48, Russia 79 rubles 93, India 87 rupees 4, China 71 18, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 17 rand 81 cents. 75 pence, British pound, 86 euro. Gold is trading at $3,377 and platinum $1,326 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $67.52 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoko.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sports, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. It started on the 13th of July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, and you can tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun, this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
South Africa's biggest party, the African National Congress, has announced plans to restructure its current coalition government known as the Government of National Unity. Now, the move aims to broaden political participation by including more parties beyond its main coalition partner, the Democratic Alliance. The decision comes amid rising tensions between the ANC and the Democratic Alliance, as well as diplomatic friction with the United States. The ANC insists that it will not allow foreign powers to influence its domestic agenda, even in the face of potential sanctions against some of its leaders. Channel Africa's Dimakatso Lushuro reports.
If they want to bring sanctions on us, let them bring them.
That was ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula addressing the media following the party's 2-day National Executive Committee meeting in Ekurhuleni, east of Johannesburg. His comments comes after a proposal in the US to sanction the party leaders following strained diplomatic relations between Pretoria and Washington. The US announced sweeping trade tariffs on South African exports set to reach 30% from August 8, 2025, placing intense pressure on the country's economy and will affect sectors including steel, agriculture and automotive components worth an estimated $3.6 billion in annual trade. The tariffs have been used by the US to try and influence transformation and foreign policy decisions in South Africa. But the ANC, which leads the government in the country, has doubled down on its stance. It says the government will not reverse its economic transformation agenda or compromise its sovereignty under the guise of opportunistic foreign pressure.
Is to basically coerce us to do things that are anti-transformation. It's not possible. If it means we're going to suffer through sanctions as leaders of the ANC, let it be. We'll never beg imperialists to subvert our democracy, to subvert our sovereignty. It happened during the period of struggle. It will happen even now. We will never forsake our country, which we fought for its liberation. and we're still marching on even now. Not this ANC, not this leadership. If they want to bring sanctions on us, let them bring them. But this country, South Africa, all its citizens know that it is a democratic country, it's a liberated country, and we are still transforming this country in order to achieve equity. And we will still pursue redress because we are not equal in this economy. This economy is still male white dominated. And you want to tell us to abandon policies that seek to advance transformation. We're told by somebody who's more wealthy than all of countries combined in the world that I'll give you Starlink, but you must not do black economic empowerment. In our country, we must agree to that. It's not possible to agree to that. You are asking us to abandon what we stand for.
Balula's statement pointed to frustrations within the GNU, particularly with the second biggest party, the Democratic Alliance. The party has rejected calls from the Democratic Alliance to deregulate and abandon broad-based economic empowerment, describing such proposals as a direct affront to the principles of the Freedom Charter and evidence of a lingering neo-imperialist mindset.
You must understand that the tariffs imposed by the United States of America are negatively going to affect our economy. And you can't, for national interest, say no, undo BEE and all of that in order to appease the United States of America, because among others, this is what the US want from us, that we must do away with certain policies, which for us, in terms of transformation, is not going to be possible.
Balula says the NEC has now decided to reset the GNU and extend an invitation to other political parties to participate. The Government of National Unity was formed after the 2024 general elections after there was no outright winner and currently includes the ANC and several other parties.
The NEC resolved to reset the GNU and mandated the officials to engage with current GNU partners to broaden participation, strengthen the functioning of the GNU and give full effect to the statement of intent. Our movement will not be short-sighted nor allow opportunistic forces to manipulate this platform for narrow partisan ends. The ANC remains clear that the GNU is a bridge towards the national democratic society we seek to build, and it's not an end in itself.
Despite global headwinds, the ANC pointed to signs of resilience in the economy, including Eskom's energy availability factor rising to 70%, a milestone in reducing load shedding. For Channel Africa News in Johannesburg, I'm Dimakatso Leshoro.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ndoro, Alvin Botha, has voiced strong concern over the language used by nuclear-armed states in promoting strategic deterrence, warning that such rhetoric undermines global disarmament efforts. Speaking in an interview on Wednesday on the sidelines of a seminar marking 80 years since the founding of the United Nations and the Hiroshima bombing at the University of South Africa, that's UNISA, Botha reaffirmed South Africa's commitment to nuclear non-proliferation. He emphasized that such narratives are incompatible with both the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, and the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe filed this report.
In 1946, the United Nations General Assembly adopted its first resolution that made nuclear disarmament a leading goal of the UN. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, entered into force in 1970 and is reviewed every 5 years in a meeting called review conferences. The NPT parties agreed in May 1995 to extend the treaty indefinitely. The year 2025 marks 30 years since the indefinite extension of the NPT in 1995. But current geopolitical climate and global political shift, chances of nuclear insecurity are on the rise. In an interview with Channel Africa, DECO Deputy Minister Elvis Portes raised South Africa's concern over nuclear superpowers' tone of language.
We are concerned as South Africa on the language that nuclear weapons armed states are actually promoting, especially in terms of strategic deterrence. We do not regard that type of language as language that are reconcilable with the key prescripts of the MPT as well as the TPNW, which advocate for, as a treaty for the prohibition of nuclear weapons as a key and critical support to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Highlighting Africa's united stance through the Pelindaba Treaty, he stressed that the continent remains firm in advocating for the peaceful use of nuclear energy.
The Pelindaba Treaty is the sum cumulative total of the aspirations of the African continent, commonly known as the Common Africa Position, where Africa have been unequivocal that nuclear should be for development and peaceful purposes. So that is an important aspect which all member states of the United Nations should obviously take note of.
Portes also noted South Africa's upcoming presidency of the TPNW conference in 2026, reinforcing the country's leadership in global nuclear disarmament policy. South Africa joined the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA in 1957. In 1991, the country voluntarily renounced its nuclear weapons program.
South Africa has been elected as the president of the TPNW at its conference in 2026 next year. What will be our role? We are also looking at what is the role, policy submission and perspectives of South Africa as it relates to the 11th review conference, as it relates to the MPT in 2026. So this is an important occasion. We reflect on the wrongs that has been done and how to build, how to ensure that there's adequate political and policy safeguards to ensure that never in our lives and the lives of the future generation that nuclear will be assigned as a weapon of mass destruction.
And as the world marked 80 years since the US dropped atomic bombs on Japan, global powers still trade nuclear threats today. UNISA's principal and Vice Chancellor Puleng Lenkabula recalled the events of 1945 in Japan.
Today's event is both celebratory and somber. We're here to remember the devastation that took place on August 6, 1945, when nuclear bombs were detonated on an unsuspecting civilian population in Hiroshima in Japan. 3 days later, on 9th August 1945, another nuclear bomb was detonated on the civilian population in Nagasaki, also in Japan. It is estimated that about 200,000 lives were lost. The exact number of those who perished may never be known because the radiation exposure continued to kill more people as the years passed. Therefore, accurate figures for victims may never be known. We at UNISA, as South Africa and the world, remember those whose innocent lives were lost as part of that war.
Meanwhile, Joseph Dube from the Institute of Disarmament and Arms Control has criticized the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty for being biased with its selective policy.
MPT is a clear demonstration of nuclear apartheid. There are few selected that are allowed to have nuclear weapons, and there are many that are not allowed to have nuclear weapons. So that's apartheid in itself. So therefore, I think we cannot perpetuate that, Deputy Minister. As we prepare ourselves as Africa, as South Africa, to go to the review conference next year, we need to start challenging the powers that be within the UN systems, to challenge them to reconsider their position, particularly on nuclear weapons. And I think it's possible. If we're able to deal with apartheid in South Africa, we can deal with this particular apartheid in the UN processes.
UNISA's Professor of Political Science, Dek Kodze, said the US's withdrawal from several UN agencies is a threat to South Africa's goal of multilateralism and cooperation. Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
The rhythm of Africa, the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Botswana has, in the recent past, been facing significant challenges regarding the availability of essential medicines and other medical commodities. Addressing Botswana's parliament yesterday afternoon in Gaborone, Botswana's capital, Botswana's Minister of Health, Dr. Stephen Modise, said that his department is currently not able to offer all comprehensive health services that it should under normal circumstances. Modise said that the development has directly impacted the healthcare system. Channel Africa's Shingarai Madondo reports from Gaborone in Botswana.
Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Health is currently not able to offer all comprehensive health services that it should be able to under normal circumstances. This situation has been aggravated by the outstanding financial obligations owed to suppliers and private health facilities, amounting to more than 1 billion pula. These arrears have directly impacted our ability to procure and supply necessary medical products to the public and health institutions on time and in adequate quantities.
This is Botswana's Minister of Health, Dr. Stephen Modise, dropping the bombshell when addressing South Africa's neighboring country's parliament yesterday afternoon, saying this shortage of funds and medicines has regrettably reduced the country's capacity to continue referring patients to private health facilities for services that cannot be provided within public health institutions. Under normal circumstances, Botswana would refer patients to private players in the health sector within the southern African country, South Africa, as far afield as India, China, and other overseas countries. However, as a result of the crisis that the President Duma Boko-led government finds itself in, Botswana has decided to temporarily suspend referrals for elective and non-urgent medical conditions and operations to private health facilities.
This includes, but not limited to, arthroplasty, this is joint replacement surgeries, insertion of prosthetic eyes, organ transplants, and other conditions or operations that are deemed to be non-life-threatening. Madam Speaker, all these and other non-life-threatening conditions will in the meantime be managed internally at nearest health facilities to avoid deteriorations and complications, while a permanent solution is being sought.
However, Dr. Kifilwe Slema, the president of Botswana Doctors Union or BDU, is of the view that the government is taking a suicidal route of managing some patients' medical conditions in the public health facilities. Dr. Slema said the public facilities in Botswana lack the necessary equipment and personnel to perform some complicated life-threatening surgeries. For nurses, watching patients' health deteriorating in front of them is traumatizing, according to Ure Ditsekileba Khosi, the vice president of the Botswana Nurses Union, or BUN. Kileba Khosi asked the government to prioritize health funding in order to save the population of Botswana, estimated at just over 2.1 million people.
Have tried to guide the government or advise that the government should prioritize health because deferring or postponing patient's booking which actually worsens the condition of the patient. So our plea is for the government to reprioritize health really. We understand their view that the resources are not allowing, but we still maintain our plea that health should be prioritized to save the population of this country.
Sales of diamonds, Botswana's economy saw a steep decline last year, with Botswana, a 50-50 joint venture between Botswana government and DBS Diamond Group, recording a 46% deficit in 2024, dropping from 45.3 billion pula to 24.6 billion pula, marking one of the steepest falls on record. The sharp downturn is straining Botswana's national budget and bank liquidity, with forecasts predicting a record 18.7 billion pula deficit for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Reporting for Channel Africa from Gaborone, Botswana, this is Shingarai Madondo.
Right, today's August the 7th, and that means a lot of things happened in history on this day, and I always like to look back in time. And we'll be looking at Côte d'Ivoire's independence, actually, in the next hour. We'll talk more about that because it's time now for the next hour to start. It's 8 o'clock Central African time, which means it's time for the final hour of today's edition of Rise and Shine, broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg in South Africa, streaming on www.channelafrica.co.za. And don't forget, you can also catch us on your mobile app. SABC Plus is what you look out for. A very good morning to you. I'm Peter Ndoro.
Good morning, I'm Asanda, Beda, and thank you for staying with Channel Africa as we get the news first before we get into this final hour of Rise and Shine. Here's Jalani Tulo Ngwebe, and then following her is Fikile Lingwadi with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Ghana's President John Mahama has declared 3 days of mourning following a helicopter crash which killed all 8 people on board, including the country's Ministers of Defence and Environment. President Mahama also suspended all official activities. The country's flags will fly at half-mast. The cause of the crash is not yet known, and the military says an investigation is underway. As our correspondent in Accra, Eric Mawena, reports, the ministers were on their way to a government event in the Ashanti region.
What we know is that from eyewitness accounts from the residents in the Ekrofom town in the Ashanti region where this incident happened, they say that they saw the military helicopter, the Z9 military helicopter, flying at a very low altitude up until the time they had a loud bang, and then they knew something was amiss and began to make their way there. The difficulty with everything as well is that this happened in a dense forest and it was a mountainous area as well.
The repatriation process of 5 of the most dangerous criminals deported from the US to Eswatini has begun. The South African Department of International Relations and Cooperation has raised concerns with Eswatini over the arrival of the group, saying their countries of origin are unlikely to receive them. The violent criminals were convicted of child rape, murder, robbery, second-degree homicide and assault, among other crimes. Acting Eswatini government spokesperson Tabile Mdluli says the group will be deported to their native countries in less than 12 months.
The repatriation processes have already begun with other stakeholders. Although at this point it's very difficult to say how long that process is going to take, we are sure maybe in less than 12 months they should all be gone back to their countries.
South Africa's Umkhonto weSizwe Party is calling on the government to withdraw from the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. They say that the group has done nothing to deconstruct colonial legacies. Instead, it exists to aid the British Crown's global influence. South Africa is a member of the Commonwealth of Nations, having rejoined in 1994 after initially withdrawing in 1961 due to international pressure and criticism of the country's then apartheid policies. KwaZulu-Natal MK Party, MPL, Ishana Basiela.
The MK Party make a very clear align itself to BRICS and not have anything to do with the Commonwealth Association or the Commonwealth. We see the West as now a crowning global power. We want to lead our people to a system where land will be restored to them and where the restitution of ill-begotten loot will take place. India, for example, is claiming its rightful ownership of diamonds and other minerals that were taken away.
Rights groups have welcomed a new law in Rwanda that aims to reduce teenage pregnancy by allowing people as young as 15 to access contraception. Lawmakers on Monday passed a bill lowering the legal age to access contraceptives without parental consent. Rwanda's health ministry said the previous minimum age limit of 18 had fueled unintended teen pregnancy, up to more than 20,000 last year. And finally, the US President Donald Trump says there's a strong possibility that he'll meet his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin soon to discuss a ceasefire in Ukraine. Earlier, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff had described as highly productive the meeting with Putin in Moscow. The BBC's Arundoje Mukherjee has the story.
There seems to be a lead up to something.
The Kremlin has been guarded, but its aide Yuri Ushakov said that the talks were useful and constructive. We have words like productive, constructive, making progress, but it's also important to reiterate here that we still don't know on what basis this positivity is being stemmed on. President Trump also importantly, while responding to a reporter's question, said, "I wouldn't call it a breakthrough and I have been disappointed before."
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Tanzania have won their match against Mauritania to book a place in the quarterfinals of CHAN. And Golf South Africa announces teams for 2025 World Amateur Team Championships. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It resurfaced a few weeks ago and has spread across the country. The prevention of foreign nationals living in South Africa from using public services such as hospitals and schools is intensifying. A civil organization turned political party known as Operation Dudula is leading the action. Operation Dudula says the recent mobilization to illegally shutting out foreign nationals from healthcare facilities is a crime prevention measure. Are South Africans feeling that foreigners are unfairly benefiting from the country's resources? How did we get here and what is the solution? We discussed this morning with Zandile Dabula, president of Operation Dudula, and then we'll also speak to Nomzamo Zondo, who is executive director at the Socio-Economic Rights Institute of South Africa a little later. We start though with Zandile Dabula, who is president of Operation Dudula. Zandile, thank you for joining us this morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning. I'm well, thanks. And thank you so much for having us today.
Our pleasure. The position of Operation Dudula of stopping foreign nationals from accessing public service facilities, authorities say is illegal. In South Africa, all individuals, and that includes foreign nationals, are entitled to access basic healthcare services as part of what the Constitution provides for. What is the organization's response?
So let me start with the Constitution, because unfortunately our Constitution has been misrepresented. Now, the Constitution talks about South Africa belongs to all who lives in it. Now, that's the preamble. But before we get to that line, there is something else at the top when nobody's talking about that. It says that we as the people of South Africa. Now, this constitution was drafted after the apartheid times. Now, this meant that it was the inclusion of the people that were disadvantaged at that time, which were Black, Colored, and Indians. Now, when the constitution was drafted, it was the diversity, inclusion of the people that were disadvantaged. It was not talking about foreign nationals. There is no country that will draft a constitution that will accommodate illegality. Now, that's the same reason why we have an Immigration Act that will talk together with the Constitution. Now, Section 17 talks about how people should come to this country being documented and have medical insurance. Now, people are not talking about that. Now, yes, it's correct. Under the Constitution, it says that everyone has the right to health, education, and all of those. But also, subsection 2 talks about when there is enough resources. Currently, we as South African, we are battling. Our systems are suffocating. So I want us to peg the Constitution aside, because the Constitution is protecting the citizens of this country. Now, there is nothing lawless with what we are doing, because we are a failed nation, failed by our own government. The very same people who are claiming that whatever that it is that we are doing is illegal, they are the ones that were supposed to be enforcing these laws, making sure that we don't have people coming in and out of the country without proper documents. Now, when one comes to a country, they will come with a permit, and the permit or visa will state what are they here to do. If they're here to do business, then they will have a minimum of 5 million invested in this country. Now, what we are seeing is that we have people who are undocumented claiming what belongs to South Africans because we are the taxpayers. We have all the right to use these facilities. Now, we are not saying they must not use they must not get medical attention. All we are saying is that we want South Africans to be prioritized, and if they are to use these facilities, then they need to pay for it. I think that's all we are saying, that they must go to private hospitals because public should be reserved for South Africans because they have all the right. They are the taxpayers in this country.
Is the challenge of undocumented foreign nationals then not one that needs to be addressed uniquely through the channels that are available via institutions like the Home Affairs departments, border controls or management bodies, etc., without it being linked to access to health and schooling, which are basic rights for all?
So, this country is lawless, I must say, and we are being failed by the very same people who are supposed to be doing their work. Now, Operation Dudula, in its inception, we have marched to all these departments. I mean, we've marched to the Home Affairs, Department of Health, Education. There is no one that will claim that we have not submitted a memorandum with a list of demands. And part of those demands are that we want our borders to be closed. I mean, we have porous borders. We have ghosts that are living in this country we can't even account for. Somebody will tell you that foreigners, it's only 4% of the population in this country. How do you count people who are undocumented? I'm just wondering where they're getting that percentage from. But the failed state is leading to this, that civil organizations like Operation Dudula are now standing up for themselves and making sure that they save the little that's left from this country. Now, we've sat on net joints where all the stakeholders were there, your SEPs, Home Affairs, immigrations, and all of them. And, we've done a nice presentation to them to show them that, our country is deteriorating, buildings are dilapidating, there's illegal connection everywhere because of the hijacked properties. And, there's at schools, there's overcrowding at schools, hospitals, people, give birth on the floors because, there's just no order in this country. But they would not listen to us. Now, this is I'm talking about something that happened 4 years ago. Now, 5 years later, we are sitting here with a bad situation that not even the government itself can be able to control because we have all the continent uniting here in South Africa, and it's not fair for us. And we don't hate them, but what we're saying is that we're not coping as South Africans. I mean, we want South Africans to be prioritized. That's what we want as Operation Dudula, and that this country needs to be law. There needs to be law and order as per the Constitution, as per the immigration laws. If people can just respect that, then we would not be here today.
So is Operation Dudula against undocumented foreign nationals in South Africa, or the lack of service delivery resources by the country's government? What should be guiding your stance or complaints here?
So it's both. So we have the government that fails to implement and enforce its laws. We have foreigners that take advantage of the broken system in this country because they can see that, if they're able to bribe an SANDF member with a mere 200 rands to cross the border, then, they can see that this country is lawless. You will not do that in Zimbabwe. You will not do that in Mozambique. In the very first time you jump leave the border gate, you will find soldiers waiting for you, and they will be checking each and every document that you have. But it's not happening here in this country. That's the same reason why there's so many crimes committed. You have hijacked cars that crosses the border every day like it's nothing. You have medication that is being stolen from these facilities, and they're crossing the borders and nothing is done about it. How many people have been killed? How many women have been raped by the very same foreigners? And the likes of SERI, Human Rights Commission, they're not saying anything about that. But immediately when you want to stop a foreigner from accessing public facilities which belongs rightfully to South Africans, then you would know that we have such organizations that are supposed to be advocating for the rights of South Africans, but they're doing the opposite.
Primary healthcare is generally free for all, and as you mentioned, it also may be charged based on one's income. And this stands for South Africans and also foreign nationals. Refugees as well are included in this clause, according to the Refugees Act. So where do you propose then that undocumented foreign nationals go for primary healthcare if you believe that it shouldn't be to South Africa's facilities because they are overstretched?
In the country, they should know why they're here. So if you have a person, I'm going to make an example with the people that are carrying asylum seekers documents. Now, these are the people that claims to be refugees. They're probably running away from their countries if there's war or anything. But the people that are here in this country, now, I don't want to talk about DRC because we know what's happening there. But I'm going to make an example with your likes of Pakistan, your Bangladesh, and all of them. They are carrying asylum seekers documents, but they own spaza shops. They, in actual fact, the whole value chain of, in actual fact, let me just say that the township economy is all in their hands because it's very rare to find a spaza shop owned by a South African. Supermarkets are owned by them. Why are they not paying for the healthcare that they are receiving? And you have a normal migrant coming from Zimbabwe here to work. Yes, whatever job that they are doing, it's not a scarce skill because yet again, we have inspectors that are supposed to be visiting these companies, making sure that the people that are employed there are of a scarce skill. It's not happening. But these people are getting salaries. Why are they depending on our public facilities? Why don't they go to private facilities so that they can pay for the services that they need? Now,
but you just mentioned that they may be charged based on their income, so they do get charged in some instances.
No. Yes, they're supposed to pay, but they're not doing that. Now, I'm going to make an example with, I went to a hospital, Baragwanath. It's the biggest hospital in the continent. I went there and I found a lady that was there for a checkup. After giving birth, you go there 3 days checkup for the child. And I asked the lady coming from Malawi that, have you paid for your services? And she couldn't hear what I was saying. I had to express myself using sign language, but at least at the end, she managed to actually understand that I'm asking whether you documented or not, or whether you have paid for the services that you have received today. And I asked the lady at the counter that have she paid? And she told me that no. An instruction was given to us that they don't have to pay. And I asked, does the instruction come from? And she sent me to an office block, the administration block, where I went to go and look for the CEO of the hospital. Unfortunately, I did not get her, but I got the two ladies that work in her office. And they said, yes, we are told that whether you're South African or not, we must not charge them for the services that they get, especially
which
when they
links
get
to what we've already discussed then, Zandile, and that falls within our constitution. But I'm running out of time, and I want to ask this final question before I let you go.
Sure.
Have you considered the ways in which Operation Tudula can maintain its relevance, continue to stand for what it stands for, without the organization's efforts coming across as xenophobic to especially outside observers? And these are not just Africans, but world citizens who are looking.
So even the word xenophobia what's that? What is it? That term is only used when South Africans are fighting for their rights when it comes to immigration. People are not labeled as xenophobic when they fight for their own country in Afghanistan, they've done that about 3 years ago. It's still happening. Ghana is fighting now. They're not labeled as xenophobic. It's only the term that's used here in South Africa to make us feel bad. And we're not going to feel bad. Unfortunately, we will have to fight for what's left in our country, because if we don't do it, then our own kids will suffer. And, we tried to reaching out to the different stakeholders, government entities, but we are not being heard. Now, the only option that we have is for us to go on the ground and make sure that we know what's happening in those public facilities, because at the end of the day, that's our tax money. We are the taxpayers, and it should benefit us rather than benefiting the people that are visitors here in this country, that are actually coming illegal in this country. I mean, there's budgets.
We're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we are completely out of time. And we
please
thank
next
you
time give us
again
enough time so that we can elaborate further.
Zandile Tabula, President of Operation Dudula, joining us here on Rise and Shine. Of course, this conversation continues.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, Rise and Shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
So we've just heard from the president of Operation Dudula, Zandile Dabula, on why the movement believes that its actions are justified, including the controversial campaign to block foreign nationals from accessing public health care and education in South Africa. Well, to offer a legal and human rights perspective on the issue, we now speak to Nomzamo Zondo, who's the Executive Director at the Socio-Economic Rights Institute of South Africa, ASERI. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Peter. Thank you for inviting us.
Let's start with your reaction. How concerned is SERI about reports of foreign nationals being denied access to public hospitals and schools?
It's difficult, Peter. It's difficult to imagine that anyone can think of targeting a child. And I don't think of that as a human rights lawyer. I don't think of that as the executive director of SERI. I think of that as Nomzamo Zondo, who also happens to be a mother. It's even worse to think that someone who gave birth 3 days ago, who's still feeling weak, has to advise Zandile Dabula what the law is in this country, that health care to birth mothers and children up to the age of 6 is free. It's difficult. But we've been considered in our position that we believe that our humanity demands that the things that we believe are necessary for us to live should be extended to everyone. And that remains SERI's position. We also, I think, not being experts in this, and we believe that our colleagues who are at organizations like Section 27, like the Treatment Action Campaign, might be better able to respond. But we also believe that it's actually a risk for South Africans to have a segment of the population untreated and unserved by the healthcare system. Because what that does is that it weakens our own protections. The reason why, for instance, we have people chasing the vaccination of children is because we know communal protection is the first line of defense. The reason we have people who track patients with tuberculosis is because we know communal protection is a line of defense for the whole community. And so when we have an organization intentionally going out to exclude a section of the population, they are opening a door that threatens all of us.
Operation Dabula says that, look, we're not saying that they can't access health facilities, but they must pay for the service instead of getting it free.
Look, so for instance, as I've explained, there's the law about who gets free services. There's a law on who pays. In any event, in private hospitals, we know for a fact, for instance, that the former First Lady of Zimbabwe was treated at a public hospital. Those with money go to public hospitals. In South Africa, those with money go to private hospitals because that's what they can afford. The people that they are chasing away at public health care facilities are the poor, are the people who can't afford to pay. And so to give that offer of saying, if you want healthcare facilities, pay for it, is in effect to say, if you can't pay for it, sorry for you, you will not get it.
From your understanding, what has fueled the rise of groups such as Operation Dudula? Is it unemployment, inequality, or is there something deeper, do you think?
So when I think alone at night and think deeply about why organizations like Operation Dudula exist, as a lawyer, we sometimes think of a silver bullet, the silver bullet that's going to win you the case, a silver bullet that's going to solve your problem. And I do honestly believe that Operation Dudula and President Zandile Dabula believes that treating migrants this way is the silver bullet that's going to solve the deep crisis we are in. So you are right. It is the multiple challenges that we are dealing with, from poverty, from mass unemployment, to poor service delivery in different fronts that's brought us to this place. And really, that's why even when they decided to march on our office, our instinct was to receive them because we understood that the source of their grievance is genuine. The source of their grievance is shared not just by them, but the hundreds and thousands of South Africans who work with SERI and organizations that are connected to SERI. And we want to then have a conversation over the table about how do we work on these things. Is migration the silver bullet? And we can tell them categorically, migration is not the silver bullet.
Is there an argument that for sure there aren't enough resources to take care of everybody, and that in a situation like that, citizens should be treated and helped first if there is a bottleneck in terms of available resources?
So the challenge that I have, I've been litigating socioeconomic rights for 12 years now, 12 years and a half. And while there can be a one line or there can be a paragraph that says the resources are not enough, when you go and dig deep, you find that the resources are there. Sometimes we know as a fact that money is sent back to Treasury. So not just a matter of that our government has the money sitting collectively somewhere, but a certain department has that money sitting in their bank account and they fail to use it to support the population. And so I struggle with that, with the argument of saying we don't have enough resources. But I do understand that what it does mean that when we, in the same way that we see how private healthcare works vis-a-vis public healthcare, is that where you have more numbers, there is more stress on the system, and there is a need for more efficiency. And if you ask me honestly today, is that efficiency prioritizing citizens against migrants? I think maybe that argument could be made, but as I explained earlier on, that's not how health works. If you decide to prioritize anyone to the exclusion of anyone, you're going to run into challenges.
Operation Dudula also says that, look, the way that foreign nationals are treated in South Africa and are allowed to get away with things, this is the words that she used, South Africans would not be able to enjoy the same privileges in countries in the region. So how do we manage this supposed imbalance where in Zimbabwe it's unlikely that a South African might be able to get free medical attention there, whereas a Zimbabwean might in South Africa?
So I agree with her that might be factually accurate. I don't know because I haven't researched it. But what I can say is that we are driven by our history. We are driven by the promise that is made in our constitution. We've decided to value the humanity of everyone because we know what happens when we don't. And so even if you can say to me 100% in the SADC region, you can even say 100% in the continent, in the continent you will not get the free healthcare services as a foreigner. I'm still going to ask you, as a South African who has lived through what you have lived through, do you want to live in such a country? Because you must understand that we have countries even where children don't get free education. We have countries where beaches are not open to everyone. Do we then say we want our beaches to be private, people must come and buy them because what everybody else is doing? We don't. We decide what are our convictions, what are our principles, and we live by those.
Nomzamo, we're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank you so much indeed for giving us a perspective on this burning issue at this time. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Peter.
That was Nomzamo Zondo, who's the Executive Director at the Socio-Economic Rights Institute of South Africa, helping us unpack the legal and human rights concerns around the growing trend of anti-foreigner mobilization in parts of South Africa. It's 8:30. Here are your news headlines with Jolene Tulongweve.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, an investigation is underway to find the cause of a military helicopter crash that killed all 8 people on board, including Ghana's Ministers of Defense and Environment. Rights groups have welcomed a new law in Rwanda that aims to reduce teenage pregnancy by allowing people as young as 15 to access contraception. And finally, a U.S. Army sergeant has been detained after wounding 5 other soldiers when he opened fire at a base in the state of Georgia. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's say good morning to Fikile Lingwati, who's got our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We start off with the football news. The Taifa Stars of Tanzania have moved close to booking a quarter-final place after registering their second straight win at the ongoing Total Energies CAF African Nations Championship CHAN 2024. Tanzania scored late through defender Shomari Kapombe to register a 1-0 win at the Benjamin Mkapa Stadium on Wednesday night. The contest that did not have many scoring opportunities was headed for a draw before Idi Nado provided a perfect cross after 89 minutes that Kapombe made no mistake controlling and sending the shot past the Mauritania goalkeeper Abderrahmane Sarr. And the defending champions, Mamelodi Sundowns, the Brazilians, coach Miguel Cardoso says he will not underestimate fellow Betway Premiership clubs ahead of the 2025-2026 season, with the Brazilians aiming for a record 9th title on the trot. The Brazilians get the show on the road with an away fixture at the Nelson Mandela Stadium in Gqeberha against Chippa United. The Portuguese mentor is approaching the league opener with caution.
Any team, any club that is capable to keep on the highest standard that allows, or the only one that allows to win competitions, must be very respectful towards the opponents. Obviously that the story of Sundowns obliges us to continue to think about winning regularly and to face every match as the last one that we play.
Cardoso stressed that Sundowns, despite being reigning champions, will not at all rest on their laurels.
We are in a process of understanding how we're going to finish, but we know the direction where we want to go. The market is very big. We'll only end in the upcoming month of September, but a lot of important matches to play before. So let's focus on the next one and then on the next one, understanding where we are. We come from a comfortable position, but not a comfort that we feel. We feel discomfort, and that's exactly what pushes ahead, is the discomfort that we feel.
On to rugby news. Scrum half Nick White has put his retirement on ice to join Australia's Rugby Championship squad for the tour of South Africa following an injury to regular number 9 Jake Gordon. A 35-year-old White announced the third and the final British and Irish Lions test in Sydney was to be his last international match, but today he was included in Joe Schmidt's 35-man squad for South Africa. Uncapped scrum half Ryan Lonergan will join 73rd Test White in the squad for next week's clash against world champion South Africa in Johannesburg and the second test in Cape Town on the 23rd of August. Now, tennis news, it's Naomi Osaka who powered into the first National Bank Open semi-final, beating number 10th seed Elena Svitolina 6-2 and 6-2. Osaka advanced to face number 16th seed Clara Towson, who eliminated 6-seeded Madison Keys 6-1 and 6-4 in the first quarterfinal of the night. Osaka, the four-time Grand Slam champion who reached number one in the rankings, continued her best performance in a WTA 1000 tournament since reaching the final in Miami in 2022. The native of Japan is seeking her 8th career title and her first since the 2021 Australian Open. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fidel Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. The upside. Your afternoons just got even better.
Bantu Biko Street by Simpiwe Dana. Ndi ready. Simpiwe, 20 years in song. So what emotions come up when you hear that, hey, you've been doing this for 20 years now?
It almost feels like no time has passed, eh? I just, I know obviously time has passed, but I don't feel it. Even about my age, I'm 45. I always get shocked when I think, oh my God, in 5 years' time, I'll be 50. Because for me as an artist, it's almost like when it comes to certain things, time stands still. And as a result, you find that a lot of artists are very childlike, which, it helps them to always have a fresh approach to issues.
I tell you what, I'm feeling healed just by that.
We take no sides, none whatsoever. We are the upside.
Right, let's take a look at what's been happening in the world of business. Here's Thabiso Luhuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. The US tariffs on South African imported goods are about to kick in. However, it's not clear whether South Africa and the US have reached a deal on the tariffs. This follows US President Donald Trump's imposition of a 30% tariff on imported South African products. South Africa faces the highest rate in sub-Saharan Africa. Other nations, including Nigeria, Ghana, Lesotho, and Zimbabwe, have been hit with a 15% tariff each. The Black Business Council has called for harsher sanctions against corrupt individuals in South Africa. This in reaction to serious allegations that suspended Independent Development Trust Chief Executive Officer Tebogo Malaka sought to bribe journalist Peter Louis Mayberg on allegations of corruption. The incident allegedly took place just days after Malaka's suspension, which followed the PricewaterhouseCoopers investigation. The investigation revealed irregularities connected to IDT's $46.8 million oxygen plant scandal. The Black Business Council CEO, Hanki Matabane, says that the law must take its course.
Corruption eats into the resources that are supposed to deliver services in the country. The IDT's role is very, very critical.
New figures show a powerful shift, as women now hold nearly a third of top executive roles, up from 17% a decade ago. As Women's Month continues, the South African Broadcasting Corporation News is trying to shed light on the changing face of leadership. Founder and the Chief Executive Officer of non-profit organization, the Women of Stature Foundation, Charlotte Duplessis, says more women are being appreciated for their work ethic.
This is a very debatable, conversational topic. I do think that women do get same opportunities. But are we stepping in and taking up those challenges or those opportunities?
A Nigerian receiver has been appointed by lenders to KEPCO Energy Resources and subsidiary, Egbin Power. Two major players in the power sector, adding to worries about the industry's financial health. KEPCO owns 70% of Egbin Power, Nigeria's biggest electricity generator. The news comes as the sector faces a cash crisis estimated at $1.31 billion. U.S. President Donald Trump says the tech giant Apple will invest an additional $100 billion or more than $953 million in manufacturing in the U.S. Apple Chief Executive Officer Tim Cook was in the Oval Office with Trump during the announcement. The BBC's Lili Jamali has more.
Apple has been trying to appease U.S. President Donald Trump, who threatened to impose tariffs specifically on Apple products. What Trump has really wanted all along is to have Apple bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Instead, what Apple has done is they said that iPhones, for example, bound for the U.S. will now no longer be made in China, but they will be made in India.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,527 naira, Botswana 13.39, Kenya 128 shilling 599, and Zambia 22 kwacha 90. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar will cost you 5.48, Russia 79 rubles 93, India 87 rupees 4, China 7 yuan 18, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 81 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Gold is trading at $3,377 and platinum $1,326 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $67.52 a barrel. For any business stories that you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about South Africa's national rugby team Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. It started on the 13th of July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, and you can tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere. No subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Today, the 7th of August, marks Independence Day in Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, a significant moment in the West African nation's history. On this day, 1960, the country officially gained independence from France. Now, one of the region's largest economies, Côte d'Ivoire has made major strides in infrastructure, cocoa production, and post-conflict recovery. But it also continues to grapple with political tensions and questions about democratic governance. This year's official celebrations are being held in the central city of Bouake, with cultural events, parades, and national reflections on progress and challenges as the country prepares for general elections in 2025, with President Alassane Ouattara expected to seek a controversial fourth term. Let's take stock now of Côte d'Ivoire's political and economic landscape and what the future may hold with international relations expert Dr. Charles Sinkala. Dr. Sinkala, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
So, a significant day for the Ivorians today, celebrating independence from France. It's been a significant time over the periods, over the decades. Take us through what you would say has been significant moments in Côte d'Ivoire's history since independence that perhaps has got us where we are today.
Yes, indeed. Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, as it may be called by many, is not different from many African nations who agitated for the independence of their governance. As well, in the 1960s, they regained their independence from the extra-colonial France, who colonized that nation. Even though they haven't detached themselves from the former colonizers, who is the French government, they have significantly made impact in terms of addressing certain issues, even under difficult circumstances of coup d'etats within the region and other economical challenges.
So, I mean, it's had its fair share of strife and challenges, as you said. I mean, we have a civil war that played out for a good number of years. Where is Ivory Coast today in terms of a unified country, or are there still fault lines?
Although they have done some stride in terms of stabilizing the political and economical challenges within the country, but it lies down to the constitutional framework, which is unstable, as we have likely heard that the incumbent president would like to extend his tenure to more than 4 terms. Generally on the African continent, many nations such as South Africa, Zambia, Nigeria, Botswana, and many others has adopted that a president should only be limited to 2 terms. That signifies the time is sworn in into government from to the next time he will be sworn in as well, irregardless of the number of years. But these changing of constitution actually purports, to persuade a narrative of individualistic tendencies in terms of political hegemonic, which gets an impact in terms of others who may not agree to such an arrangement. I give an example of what has happened in South Africa, the adoption of 1996 constitution. We rarely hears political changes in terms of tenure and others, which has significantly stabilizes the country. But Ivory Coast still rewrites the constitution, which attracts a lot of negative energy from other sectors of society, even internationally.
My last trip to Côte d'Ivoire, one of the things I noticed was the number of French brands that one can see visibly in the main city, the capital city in Côte d'Ivoire. Even though Côte d'Ivoire got its independence from France in 1960, it remained for a long time one of the closest allies to France over the years. Have things changed once we've started to see the Burkina Faso's, the Mali's moving away from France in the way that they did?
Well, Côte d'Ivoire, like the other 14 Francophone countries, still are attached to the 1952 convention, which was later updated. Initially, it was established before the independence of those francophone countries. The giving away of the independence from the rule of the French government to francophone countries had conditions that met them that they shall enjoy the political independence, but the economical independence and the influence shall still continue until such a time that the French government sees it fit to withdraw such treaties. Hence, you can see that the involvement of the French government in terms of the governance and the mineral governance of the nation still has those ties. So the umbilical cord has not been detached completely, even though over the years nations of the francophone countries, including Ivory Coast, has tried by all means to detach themselves from France, as we have seen geopolitical players such as the United States, Russia, and the United Kingdom, who has now, post the 1885 Scramble for Africa treaties which were signed. Now we have nations who can go to even nations that were not formally colonized by them. Hence the competition has come. But the French government has put up systems and bureaucratic areas and barriers that makes it quite impossible, for Ivory Coast or any other francophone countries to engage another nation.
So, what does Independence Day mean for an Ivorian? For some countries, it's quite simple because some of the liberation struggles were quite bloody and loss of lives. Not quite the same situation in Côte d'Ivoire. What would a day like today mean for an Ivorian?
Really, for if you talk about the period between the early 60s and just let's talk about 1960, the year we refer to the independence of Ivory Coast. Most of those people who were born probably in 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s are not there, to deliberate of what happened and how they can feel now as compared to how they were governed. You must remember that prior to the independence of Ivory Coast, these nations were managed purely by the governors appointed by the colonial powers, such as France. The administration were managed direct from France, and these are the places they called Office of the Governor, where the nation and the people of Ivory Coast reported. But even saying that, things have changed in the sense that now we have like presidents, who are African people, whom to some extent you might view them as our own. But the interest that they serve, it is partially the Ivorian interest. Mostly the interest they serve is the French government's interest. That's why we have seen that the development has been very slow as compared to if we attain the absolute independence, which includes the economical independence. We can see how talent is exported without any barriers. We can see how the French government has been stealing, for the lack of better word, talent. You can see how the French government or the Paris national team, the soccer national team, the type of players which are mostly coming from those francophone countries as they identified. And that's just a piece of the iceberg. Deep down, we can see that the financial mechanism as well has been adopted, that the 1952 Charter and Agreement, where these francophone countries signed, that their investment, 80% of their national saving has to be deposited by the national treasury of the French government, and many other treaties that we cannot see, but we can only see that the impact of those treaties has brought.
Each region has powerhouse countries and economies. Southern Africa, for example, one would think South Africa. West Africa, we know that the Nigerian economy is enormous. Where does Ivory Coast sit in terms of economics and perhaps even influence in West Africa?
Pierre, it's unfortunately that we had the view that certain nations, as you have likely mentioned, due to their economic and political stability, that they may be big brothers or big sisters to nations such as Ivory Coast, nations such as Lesotho, nations such as Botswana, and many other small nations that are still behind in terms of development. The challenge is the bureaucratic system of governance, where one nation claims, that they're a sovereign nation, and that they cannot, engage with the nations that are developed, such as South Africa, to be to have a bench-making mission, to be, to be advised or to be coached to some extent on how to address the estual colonizers, in terms of regaining their independence and not to be dependent on them. That's why, nations such as South Africa or Nigeria, they will sit back and although they can engage, but these nations, they consider themselves to be equal, and that's why they fall prey to the former colonizers who comes back once every now and again. So the formation of 1963 Organization of African Union, had an agenda that such nations shall be protected by a group of leaders of other nations that will be, a collective agreement in terms of even policy, that it shall be uniform, from Cape Town to Ethiopia, from Ethiopia to Sudan and to the northern Maghreb in the Egypt side. But what came out from there, it is an isolation, where nations are isolated, and you can see even the constitutions, the 55 constitutions that we have in the African continent, they are completely different. There's no uniformity in terms of the governance.
Dr. Sinkala, I wish we could have talked for longer, but sadly we've run out of time. Thank you so much indeed for giving us some thoughts on Côte d'Ivoire as it celebrates its Independence Day today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That's international relations expert, Dr. Charles Sinkala. So if you were born in 1960, how old are you, Palisa? 85, isn't it?
I was born in 1989.
Yeah.
I'm 36. So that would make me 46, 50.
My maths is terrible. It should be easy to calculate,
If you were born in what?
1960.
1960.
That should be. It's like 85, right? It's 85.
No, 40.
This is not my question. Let me keep quiet.
Peter, we're not. Maths is not our thing.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there. But
Okay.
So Côte d'Ivoire is quite old. What's coming up on the move later?
Yeah, we've got some interesting conversations really coming up, and the one is going to be one that you might think is controversial, but it is not really, because many people do it here on the African continent. Today we're going to be celebrating Breastfeeding Week, and we're going to be looking at breastfeeding and sharing breastfeeding from a family context. Maybe you and your sister and your siblings share the breastfeeding of one child. And
what do you mean sharing the breastfeeding?
You are breastfeeding the child.
So you're nursing your own child and another child?
Yes.
Okay. So a wetness, I mean, that's not a new concept, hey?
Yes,
this has
it's
been
not,
going
no.
on since the beginning of time.
Sure. So we're looking at that and how prevalent it is on the African continent. And what are the positives? What are the negatives around it? There must be some taboos in many communities on why it's done and why it's not done.
And probably some taboos in Western medicine as well. So I wonder if Western medicine thinks it's a good thing to do, but it's also a practice that's been practiced all across the continent. We will be in our parenting and family corner. And, you know, like when children are born, many families circumcise their children before maybe even age 10. A lot of parents pierce their children's ears, you know, when they're really young. But today we're speaking about the autonomy of children's bodies. Why can't we just let children decide what to do with their bodies, especially if it's not something that's medically inclined?
Yeah, it's a powerful one, that one. And culture, religion, and all sorts of things have a hand in there, doesn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's coming up on Channel Africa. Stay tuned for that. On the Move. That's how we end the show, Africa Rise and Shine, on this Thursday, the 7th of August. Tune in tomorrow, 6 till 9. We'll be together then. My name is Asanda, Beda. Goodbye from us.
And from me, Peter Ndoro, have an awesome day. The news is next with Jalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Top stories. Asawa. An investigation is underway to find the cause of the Ghana military helicopter crash, and rights groups welcome new law aimed at reducing teenage pregnancy in Rwanda. An investigation is underway to find the cause of a military helicopter crash that killed all 8 people on board, including Ghana's Ministers of Defence and Environment. Ghana's President John Mahama has since declared 3 days of mourning following the crash. President Mahama has also suspended all official activities. The country's flags will fly at half-mast. The cause of the crash is not yet immediately known. As our correspondent in Accra, Eric Mawe